Good morning, everybody, as you're coming in. Thank you for being with us this morning. We're going to get started in a minute. Give it another. All right, it looks like we have, sneak attack and a couple of people come in. All right, it looks like we have plateaued a little bit with people arriving, so we're going to get started because we have a lot to get through today. Hello and welcome to our ALMA Book Buzz for May. I am Annie Mazes and I work with HBG now, Hachette Book Group. I represent our Workman Publishing titles. This is a very important link right here. Please make note of this. It is case sensitive, and it will take you to all of the books you hear about today. There are a lot of them, so they'll be all in one place. So make note of this. It'll be in the chat throughout this event, and I will show it again at the end, but it is going to be very helpful, I think. So I'm going to get us started. As I said, I'm Annie Mazes. You are welcome to email me if there's any questions or if you see anything that you like. I'm happy to send you ARCs if I have them, certainly e-galleys. First up, I'm going to discuss the Complicities. After her husband of several decades, Alan, is exposed for being a financial fraud, Suzanne's wealthy, comfortable life shatters. Alan goes to prison, Susan files for divorce and begins to create a new life and identity. And then Alan is released early, and many people whose lives he ruined demand restitution. This is for readers of The Glass Hotel and O. William. Next up, we have Smart Brevity. Back when the authors of Smart Brevity worked at the Washington Post, web trackers revealed an eye-opening truth. Hardly anyone clicked through the story's first page. So brevity is confidence, length is fear became the basis for Smart Brevity, the guiding principle that turned Politico and then Axios into hugely influential media companies. Smart Brevity is a system and strategy that will teach anyone who works with words how to think more sharply, communicate more crisply, and save your readers time. There are dozens of tips for choosing the right words, kicking bad habits, and staying provocative in this book. Lark Ascending is by Silas House, the author of Southernmost. This gives us a riveting portrait of Americans as refugees experiencing the same hostility often shown to others attempting to immigrate to our shores. Lark and his family secure a place on a refugee boat headed to Ireland, but Lark is the only one to survive the trip. This is for readers of novels like Station 11, The Dog Stars, and Migration. You Are Not a Shitty Parent. The best-selling author of How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids has an important message for stressed-out caregivers who want to do better. The secret to being a more effective, more empathetic person and raising happy, resilient kids starts with practicing compassion for yourself. Naumburg gives tangible steps for how to use each to help reduce anxiety, trust instincts, move past the guilt, and become a calmer, more confident person. Ghetto Gastro presents Black Power Kitchen. Ghetto Gastro is a Bronx-based creative and culinary collective. It delivers a highly visual manifesto for living and eating to stimulate the mind, body, and heart in their first book, Black Power Kitchen. This book promotes Black excellence through recipes, art, and thought-provoking text. It arms readers with 75 recipes that are mostly plant-based, more than 150 photographs, and thought-provoking contributions on topics ranging from the work of Black mothers to the importance of resistance and rebellion. How sex changed the internet and the internet changed sex. From the moment there was online, there has been sex online. In fact, virtually every significant development that defines the internet has come out of the meeting of sexuality and technology. This is a lively, highly visual history, short, serious, very entertaining. The Miracle of Salt. If you are a cook, you understand that salt is an incredibly important ingredient, and James Beard Award-winning author Naomi Dogood takes this incredible approach to all salts of the world. She illuminates many foods born from the power of salt and offers home-friendly recipes that highlight the nuances of salt's flavors. This book is going to be beautiful, full photographs throughout. Some were sisters, identical twins Isabella and Ha were born in Vietnam and raised on opposite sides of the world and knowing little about each other until they were teenagers and they were reunited. Award-winning journalist Erika Hayasaki spent years interviewing each of the birth families and adoptive family members and telling the girls incredible stories from their perspectives. This is for readers of All You Can Ever Know and American Baby. Inciting Joy is by Ross Gay. I want to send this book to every human in our country and around the world. In these 13 essays, prize-winning poet and author Ross Gay considers the joy we incite when we care for each other, especially through life's inevitable hardships. Throughout Inciting Joy, he explores how we can practice recognizing that connection and, crucially, how we can grow it. In an era in which what divides us garners so much attention, Inciting Joy offers a vital alternative, what might be possible if we turn our attention to what brings us together. And this book, I think, is really important, not really circ-friendly because it is an activity book, but it is incredibly important for you to know. I think it'd be great for programming. It is by W. Kamau Bell and Kate Schatz, the author of Rad American Women A to Z. It provides readers with unique hands-on understanding of systemic racism and how we can dismantle it. And that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Randy Chan. I'm the new director of channel marketing at HTP Books, Harlequin Trade Publishing. I was previously marketing director at PRH in Canada, and I joined HTP Books in 2016 to help launch their literary imprints like Park Row Books and Hanover Square Press. So technically, I'm the new Lynette Kim, although Lynette is irreplaceable, and I look forward to meeting all of you for the next few months. I'm going to start with The Librarian Spy by Madeline Martin. And when we talk about low-hanging fruit, I hope this is an easy win with this crowd. The novel follows Ava, a librarian at the Library of Congress, who receives an unexpected offer from the US military, who wants to bring her to Lisbon to work undercover as a spy gathering intelligence. So the story of American librarian spies has been covered before, but only in nonfiction. I think this novel is a future national bestseller, and hopefully with your help, a future library reads pick. The next novel is The Witches of Moonshine Manor by Bianca Morae, and this writer published 2 novels with Penguin Random House, 2 moving works of literary fiction. And Bianca has now moved to our new imprint Mira, and to say the least, she has made one giant editorial pivot into this wonderful world of witches. The Witches of Moonshine Manor is about 5 octogenarian witches who gather together to save their beloved home, Moonshine Manor. And as the deadline to save the manor approaches, fractures among the sisterhood of witches are revealed and long-held secrets are exposed. The best way I can describe this fun novel is that it's Golden Girls meets practical magic. The next novel is The Two Lives of Sarah by Catherine Adele West. So special because it won the HarperCollins lead read of the season. And because of that, all HarperCollins sales reps will push this book out in the biggest possible way. So why all the hype? The Two Lives of Sarah is about a young mother living at a boarding house in 1960s Memphis, Tennessee. The world around Sarah starts lighting up. Martin Luther King Jr. is leading the fight for equal rights. And Sarah is drawn into the hope and energy of that time. This story of a resilient woman is filled with Black music and cultural references that transport you to Memphis in the 60s. When you read it, it feels like you're reading an instant classic. And we have a goal to make this a library reads pick as well, so you're going to hear a lot more about this in the months to come. The next one is Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 by Lisa Unger. All hail the queen of thrillers. Lisa is truly one of the most solid thriller writers. You don't need me to tell you that. I know you all love her. Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 follows 3 couples who have rented an Airbnb, a cabin in the woods. And as the weekend unfolds, a storm keeps the friends indoors, and it turns out the friends are keeping secrets from one another. Another great, great book from Lisa. Before Your Memory Fades, so it makes me so happy to see the success of this series by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. As a recap, this is about a cafe in Tokyo that allows customers to travel back in time to revisit any moment in their lives of their choosing. But you can only revisit that moment until your coffee gets cold. The series has sold well over 1 million copies worldwide. It spawned a movie in Japan, and now it's about to be a Netflix TV series. So I hope you've fallen in love with these books. If you haven't, do yourself a favor and get a galley. Angels of the Resistance by Noel Salzar. This World War II novel follows two teenage sisters in the Netherlands who are recruited as part of the Dutch resistance. They've been trained to fight and to kill influential Nazis. And ultimately, it's the bond between the sisters that pull them through the worst atrocities. Noel Salazar wrote the bestseller The Fight Girls a few years ago, and with this novel, she's joined the top ranks in this category alongside Pam Jenoff and Kate Quinn. Thanks everyone for listening. I'll talk to you soon.
Hi, this is Nicole from Quirk Books. It's so great to see so many of you in the chat. I am here to talk to you about two of our upcoming fall titles. The first one is Ghost Eaters by Quirk's rising horror star Clay McLeod Chapman. If you participated in StokerCon last weekend, you may have seen him at Library Day, either in person or virtually, as his first horror novel, The Remaking, is a 2022 HWA Summer Scares pick. So he this fall is picking up with his third horror novel with Quirk, Ghost Eaters. Ghost Eaters' central question is as tantalizing as anything in horror fiction has to offer. If you could take a drug that allowed you to see your dead loved ones, would you take it? The characters in this novel, a group of best friends from college, do indeed take this opportunity when their charismatic leader seemingly dies of an overdose, not knowing that once you open the door to the dead, anything and anyone can walk through, and there's no guarantee that you can ever close that door again. This is steeped in dread and Southern history with some unforgettable scenes that are so truly disturbing that you'll have to catch your breath. There's also a great twist ending that I personally didn't see coming. We have a truly terrifying cover and a fantastic PW review, more on the way, and great blurbs from Chuck Wendig, Riley Sager, Grady Hendricks, Amma Katsu, Rachel Harrison, and John Horner Jacobs. Next slide, please. And the next book is a book you probably wouldn't expect from Quirk. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that How to Win the War on Truth will be one of the most important books Quirk has ever published. And we've never needed the insights contained within it more than we do right now. This is a book that explains in the simplest possible terms in a graphic handbook format what propaganda is, what its value is to the powerful and elite, the many ways in which it spreads, and how it shaped politics, capitalism, and the culture from World War II to today. Its message is simple. If we want to preserve democracy and live our values, we have to understand how disinformation spreads through news, social media, and political campaigns. This book was very relevant when we first when we acquired it. And it's even more relevant now as we see concepts in this book play out in real time, almost every day. This book works for news junkies who listen to the Daily and NPR and spend a lot of time on Twitter every day, but it also works for people who feel out of the loop and overwhelmed and want to better understand the political dynamics shaping our current reality. It'll appeal to fans of award-winning nonfiction books like White Trash by Nancy Eisenberg and big idea books like Made to Stick by Chip Heath. Its highly accessible and digestible format will appeal to visual learners who gravitate towards What If and Thing Explainer by Randall Munroe. Every concept introduced in this book starts with a historical example, one that you all might be familiar with is the notorious Mcdonald's hot coffee case. And the author, Chris Vitale, walks you through what happened, the history of the case, and how it was presented to the public through the media as an example of a greedy and frivolous lawsuit. In reality, the coffee was the same temperature as a car's radiator. The woman suffered third-degree burns, and there were 700 similar claims against McDonald's for hot coffee. We just didn't know about it because manufacturers of hazardous products used this highly publicized case to wage a public relations campaign with the end goal of tort reform. For every concept, the author explains what it is and how it is historically, economically, and how it works historically, economically, and psychologically. And sidebars show how all these concepts tied together using real-world examples. This will be coming out right before the before midterms, and I think it will be a great guide for anyone who's coming into your library who is looking for ways to better understand the news and and social media and how it applies to their everyday life. Thank you all for your time.
Good morning. I'm Margaret Coffey from Source Books. Thanks for joining us today and supporting our list, and a special thanks to Annie for organizing today's book buzz. Please visit our website for discussion guides and newsletter sign up. Visit Edelweiss and NetGalley for e-galleys. Next, I hope you've had a chance to read some of my favorite recent backlist landmark titles. The Bookwoman's Daughter was an instant New York Times bestseller. And now on to our new books. Next slide. From Christina Mcmorris, the New York Times bestselling author of Sold on a Monday, comes The Way We Hide, a sweeping World War II tale of an illusionist whose recruitment by British intelligence sets her on a perilous, heart-wrenching path. Fina Voss performs on stage as the assistant to an unruly escape artist, but behind the curtain, she's the mastermind of their act. She catches the eye of MI9, who task her with designing escape aids to help Allied prisoners escape German prison camps. She utilizes common items like a Monopoly board and a deck of cards to hide maps and messages. The Ways We Hide is a gripping historical fiction tale based on actual World War II events. Next slide. From Shauna Robinson, the author of Must Love Books, comes her sophomore title, The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks, which follows a new bookseller in a small historical town filled with quirky characters. Maggie begins hosting underground book club events to fight against a repressive historical society determined to control the books available in the store. But keeping the club quiet, selling her customers the books they want, you know, the ones from the century, and dodging the historical society is nearly impossible, especially when Maggie unearths a town secret that could upend everything. Next. And now moving on to our Poison Pen mystery line and a special call out to our #1 library read selection for June, The Woman in the Library. Let me get right to the point. Every pun intended here. Book of Knives is an irresistibly unsettling psychological thriller with a locked room setting at an abandoned summer camp where a dysfunctional family begins to implode as secrets rise to the surface and a cherished set of knives begins to disappear, one finely honed blade at a time. Recently widowed and grieving for her first husband, filmmaker Nora married his best friend Paul after he comforted her in the months following her loss. When Paul received some distressing news from his family, he and Nora agreed to drive to Hidden Lake, Paul's parents' summer campsite, to fix up the building there that Paul's parents can no longer maintain. Nora detects hostility and unease at the camp immediately, heightened by her sister-in-law becoming increasingly unnerved as her precious knives continue to disappear. Next, on to nonfiction and a quick look at recent backlist. And next, Helltown is a fascinating true crime narrative investigating serial killer Tony Costa, whose killings of young women on Cape Cod captivated literary icons and rivals Kurt Vonnegut and Norman Mailer as it unfolded. In the winter of 1969, the bodies of 4 murdered young women were discovered in a cemetery near the tip of Cape Cod in a place once known as Helltown. A bizarre former taxidermist with a split personality and a penchant for violence, Costa ultimately mobilized friends in the hippie community for support and retribution, much like Charles Manson would do months later and on the opposite coast. Costa embarked on a daring cat and mouse game with investigators who, as the body count kept growing, were desperate to put an end to the killing season on Cape Cod. Next, imagine Vanessa Williams as Cleopatra or Dooley Hill as Jean Kelly in Singing in the Rain. What would our world be like if more actors in the films we grew up with loving were Black? In Black Hollywood, photographer Karel Augustus enlisted Black celebrities and performers from all areas of entertainment to recreate iconic scenes from classic Hollywood movies, television, and other media. The images illuminate the role of race in Hollywood history by reimagining classic films with Black actors, renewing readers' appreciation of the past while celebrating the hottest Black stars of today and inspiring the artists of the future. Karel is a Los Angeles-based photographer whose career has taken him around the world to shoot some of the biggest stars on the planet. Next, and finally, one of our upcoming Casa romance titles, Next. The sequel to Alexis Hall's breakout boyfriend material, Husband Material, is a hilarious LGBTQIA rom-com about life, love, marriage, and everything in between. Luke and Oliver may have found their happily ever after, but that doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing from here. Faced with friends getting married everywhere they look, Luke feels the social pressure to propose, but as they survive 4 weddings and a funeral, Luke and Oliver will have to come to grips with what their own happily ever after was truly meant to be. Good thing Oliver is such perfect husband material. Next. Please visit our website to look at other fabulous upcoming titles. Thanks for listening. Vote for Library Reads. Have a great day. Come see us at ALA and over to Soho Press.
Hi there, my name is Erica Lobrick and I'm a publicist at Soho Press, and I'm so excited to share with you some of our biggest upcoming titles. If you're not familiar with Soho, we publish award-winning crime fiction under our Soho Crime imprint, literary fiction under Soho Press, and also YA under Soho Teen. With that, I will get started. So first up, we have Booker listed author Ned Bowman, a new book from him called Venomous Thumbsucker coming out in July. This is darkly humorous dystopian climate fiction in our literary Soho Press imprint, recently optioned for TV by a UK production company as well. So hopefully in the near future, we'll have a series to binge watch together. This takes place in the near future when tens of thousands of species are going extinct, and there's a whole industry working to preserve any remnants and eventually hopefully resurrect them. So one day a cyber attack hits all the existing biobanks and it wipes out every last trace of these disappearing species. And there's one in particular that becomes of interest, the venomous lumpsucker, pictured here, which is a disgusting looking bottom feeder that also happens to be the smartest fish on the planet. 2 people are concerned with finding the lumpsucker. There's Karen Ressaint, an animal cognition scientist who cares deeply about animals and is horrified by what humans have done to them. And then there's Mark Halyard, who is an exec in the extinction industry who played a part in a mining operation that destroyed the lumpsucker's last known habitat, and his motives are a little less wholesome. So these 2 people set out to try and find any last remaining venomous lumpsuckers in the wild, and they get drawn into the mystery of who attacked the biobanks and why they did it, and what's really going on here. So this is classic Ned Bowman in all his obscure, fantastically crafty glory, and it's perfect for readers who are interested in a fresh take on climate fiction with the humorous and discerning take here. Next, we have our lead summer title for Soho Crime, Shudder by Ramona Emerson, coming out in August. This is a debut novel by an Indigenous author who is an award-winning Dene filmmaker in New Mexico. Tommy Orange calls Shudder utterly unputdownable, and I could not agree more. It really grabs your attention from the first page. It's so well written, and it immerses you in this blood-chilling story set in the heart of New Mexico's Navajo Nation. The story follows Rita Todachin, who is a forensic photographer working with the Albuquerque police. And Rita is known for capturing things that other people usually overlook at crime scenes, but end up proving essential to solving cases. Rita's secret is that she sees the ghosts of the victims, and they usually point out those essential clues to her. And as helpful as that sounds, when these ghosts figure out that Rita can see them, they often harass and nag Rita in their desperation for help and justice. And what's more, in Navajo culture, death and spirits are really taboo, so Rita's ability has ostracized her from her community and driven her away from her home on the Navajo reservation. In Shudder, Rita encounters an especially persistent ghost who can't remember how she died but insists that she was murdered, and her quest for help embroils Rita in a dangerous journey involving local cartels. This is a pulse-pounding, unrelenting thriller with strong horror elements, but at its heart, it's a really beautifully written coming-of-age story about a young Navajo woman who is making sense of her identity and her place in the world. This is fantastic for fans of crime fiction, supernatural horror, and Indigenous fiction, as well as any Jessica Jones fans who like a nuanced story about an ordinary woman who has to become a superhero. finally, I'm so excited to give you an early look at a really exciting title on our fall list, Sacrificio by Ernesto Maestro-Reed, coming in September. This is a little over 400 pages, so it's on the longer side. Would definitely recommend getting an early copy to read. This is a spellbinding literary masterpiece full of gorgeous poetic writing, intricate storytelling, and a wonderful balance of intimacy and expansiveness. Set in Cuba in 1998, this is both a sweeping portrait of a nation in full collapse and a profoundly moving story of a young man, Rafa, finding himself as he searches for his missing friend, Renato. This search leads him throughout Havana, including a mostly abandoned AIDS sanatorium, which is where historically the Cuban government quarantined HIV-positive citizens for life, and an unintended consequence was that they created a safe space for queer culture to thrive. Rafa also discovers that his friend Renato is leading a group of HIV-positive counter-revolutionaries planning to overthrow the Castro government during the Pope's upcoming visit. So there's a lot more to the story as the plot unfolds, and I'll let you hopefully dip in and get into that. But among the standout elements are how this novel depicts queerness in a country where it's only sometimes tolerated, and its unique depiction of AIDS, where without diminishing its severity, this deadly disease becomes a fount of community, power, and resistance against an oppressive government. What's more, the story unfolds through a mesmerizing method of nested storytelling, where we have stories within dialogues within stories, and these interlaced narratives move seamlessly across different moments in the timeline. And as you peel back each layer, you find that each character has multiple identities and agendas. This is a passionate symphonic work about queerness and life lived on the margins of a declining society, and it's great for readers of queer, Latinx, and historical fiction, and a must-read for fans of Rebecca Mackay's The Great Believers. And with that, I will hand it off to the next person. All of these are available for request, and feel free to email me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Dooley and I will be presenting for Bloomsbury today. Up first, here's a quick one-liner on some upcoming titles. A Life in Light is an uplifting memoir and essays. Meet Me by the Fountain is a highly entertaining account of the mall's rise, fall, and ongoing reinvention. Dirtbag Massachusetts is a gritty memoir from the internet's beloved Isaac Fitzgerald. And The Half-Life of Valerie Kaye, new from the author of the recent The Kingdoms, is an epic Cold War novel set in a mysterious Soviet town. So let's get started. The Pornography Wars. This is perfect for readers of Peggy Orenstein's Boys and Sex, and this book is a huge eye-opener as to the role pornography plays in our everyday lives. The Pornography Wars is a big think look at pornography from a historical, religious, and cultural perspective. Dr. Kelsey Burke has spent the last 5 years researching the long history of pornography in America. Through this, she offers a complete understanding of porn's place in society, having interviewed everyone from sex workers, activists, therapists, religious leaders, and consumers. Debunking the myths that surround porn and porn usage, Dr. Burke shows how everything from the way we teach children about sex to the legal protections for what can be published is tied up in the deeply complicated battles over pornography. Dr. Burke shares a sweeping, savvy, and deeply researched book, and this is a necessary and comprehensive new look at pornography and American life. Next, please. Cyclorama by Adam Langer. This one is perfect for fans of The Breakfast Club and for readers of Trust Exercise by Susan Choi and Meg Wollitzer's The Interestings. Cyclorama is a propulsive story of 10 teenagers brought together by a high school production of The Diary of Anne Frank that will change the rest of their lives. In 1982, a group of students auditioned for the spring play, eager for the chance to escape their difficult everyday lives. Declan is confident he'll get the lead, but is shocked when the director casts another student who coincidentally has been seen alone at the director's house. Years later, a cast member comes forward with an allegation dating back to the time of the play. With tremendous humanity and great tenderness, Cyclorama reveals how the traumas of our youth echo throughout our politics, our careers, and our lives. Next slide, please. The House of Fortune by Jessie Britton. This one is for fans of Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell and Bloomsbury's own Pure Nessie by Susanna Clark. The House of Fortune is a fantastical standalone companion novel to the New York Times bestseller The Miniaturist, which sold over 2 million copies worldwide and featured Anya Taylor-Joy in a TV adaptation. In Amsterdam 1705, Thea Brandt is haunted by her mother's death and her father is faced with increasing financial difficulties. One day, Thea receives an unexpected invitation, and her family hopes help can be found by meeting a husband at this exclusive ball. However, on her 18th birthday, the day marking her mother's death, Thea receives a parcel containing an unsettling figure of the miniaturist, a shadowy creature. It soon becomes clear that another fate is in mind for this family. The House of Fortune is an unputdownable novel about love and obsession, family and loyalty, and the fantastic power of secrets. Next slide, please. And finishing up, here is a quick overview of some exciting titles we have. Illuminations is a fantastical short story collection from Alan Moore, the writer of V for Vendetta and Watchmen. Little Nothings is a gripping thriller about the dark side of female friendship and obsession. We have two inspiring cookbook memoirs about grief and passion in Breadsong and The Year of Miracles. And you can find We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies and Little Rabbit in bookstores now. And keep an eye out for award-winning novels Girlhood and Zori coming out in paperback soon. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for always supporting our books. Feel free to email me directly at lauren.dooley@bloomsbury.com to request galleys, and thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Camarco with Macmillan, and I am so excited to be here chatting with you today. This is all the ways that you can find us on the internet, and I definitely encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or requests or need anything from what I talk about today. So next, first I'm going to talk about Hester by Lori Lico Albanese. This book asks, who is the real Hester Prynne? This is a vivid reimagining of the woman who inspired the Scarlet Letter and a journey into the enduring legacy of New England's witchcraft trials in a beautiful blend of research and imagination, and further shows how throughout the ages, women who are different are deemed dangerous, and that to embrace one's intuitive sensory powers is both brave and necessary. Next is Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen. This is one I'm particularly excited about. It is Knives Out with a queer historical twist, set in 1952 at the Lavender House, where a soap empire matriarch lived and where the residents and staff didn't have to hide who they are. But to keep their secret, they've needed to keep everyone else out, and now they're worried they're keeping a murderer in. A detective is brought in and quickly finds himself a pawn in a family game of old money, subterfuge, and jealousy. This is the start of a mystery series set in the LGBTQ+ community in 1950s San Francisco, and will be great, obviously, for fans of Knives Out, all of the Agatha Christie-inspired media these days, and especially locked room mysteries. Next is The Makeup Test by Janelle Ho. This is the perfect debut rom-com for every lit nerd out there, which probably includes everybody watching this webinar today. It follows two college exes who find themselves battling against each other and their unresolved feelings for a spot in a prestigious PhD program. And believe me when I tell you, this book has everything. It has a sexy game of Scrabble. It has cardigans with elbow patches and more literary references than you could ever need. It is just a delight and so much fun while being thoughtfully fat positive and featuring a heroine whose career journey is just as important as her journey to find love, a la The Love Hypothesis and The Kiss Quotient. Next is The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Maylor. This is a near-future speculative thriller in which humankind discovers intelligent life in an octopus species with its own language and culture, and sets off a high-stakes global competition to dominate the future. In addition to acclaimed literary chops, starting this year, Naylor will serve as the international advisor to the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Basically, he knows a thing or two about octopuses. This is a brainy breakneck thriller about big issues like Jeff Vandermeer's Annihilation, or even a Michael Crichton for a New Generation. Next, Starry Messenger by internationally renowned scholar, writer, and thought leader Neil deGrasse Tyson. Here he brings his cosmic perspective to civilization on Earth and shines a new light on the crucial fault lines of our time: war, politics, religion, truth, beauty, gender, and race. While his wildly popular Astrophysics for People in a Hurry was a slim collection of his previously published magazine columns that still sold over 1 million copies, Starry Messenger is a substantial, new, and original book of Tyson's boldest ideas on humanity in the context of the vast cosmos. And finally, How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. Angie Cruz was the author of Dominicana, which was a GMA Book Club pick, a Women's Prize finalist, an Alex Award winner, and a Russian notable book. So we're very excited about this follow-up. It follows mid-50s Cara Romero, who's forced back into the job market for the first time in decades when she loses her job in the Great Recession. Set up with a job counselor, Cara instead begins to narrate the story of her life, from love affairs, friendships, struggles with debt, gentrification, and loss, and eventually what really happened between her and her estranged son. This book is incredibly timely with its themes of immigration, aging, LGBTQ plus acceptance, and female friendship. And that is it from me. And the next slide, again, here's all of my contact information. Please reach out if you have any questions or any requests. Thanks again.
Hello, thank you for joining us today. I am Chris Vicari of Union Square and Company, formerly known as Sterling Publishing, and to kick it off, let's return to Pompeii for the second installment in Elodie Harper's Wolf Den trilogy. It's The House with the Golden Door. If you read The Wolf Den, the first title in the trilogy, called by some reviewers exhilarating and enthralling, you'll recall that, spoiler alert, our lead character, Amara, has escaped her life as a slave in the town's most notorious brothel, but now her existence depends on the affections of her patron, a man she might not know as well as she once thought. So she is far from being completely free and has to face a different set of tensions and challenges and dangers, made even more complicated since she is also being pursued by the man who once owned her. Apart from the historical fiction element that drew in fans of Circe, what readers seem to most appreciate about this book is this main character and her incredible will to survive and also try to thrive in very far from ideal circumstances. And even if you don't agree with what she does, you will always understand and sympathize with her. If you'd like to see a copy, we have some digital review copies out there on Edelweiss, so request, and you too can immerse yourself in Amara's story. Book 3 in the trilogy will follow in 2023. Continuing our list of fiction with my next slide, it's horror meets science. It's Wrath, with a little emphasis on the RAT in Wrath, by New York Times bestselling authors Sharon Malem and Daniel Kraus. The story of a genetically enhanced laboratory rat named Sammy, whose supersized intelligence helped him to engineer his escape out of the lab and into the world. It's a world that has no idea how to deal with them and the menace he represents, especially because, you know, rats like to breed. I call it Jurassic Park meets Planet of the Apes in that line, and saying, while you were wondering if you could create it, you didn't stop to think if you should. We've also confirmed author Daniel Kraus for a Library Reads event at ALA Annual in Washington, D.C., and we squeamishly look forward to this book's arrival in October. Lastly, today in fiction, next slide please, A Broken Blade. A little backstory from last December when 25 book talkers, those are TikTok influencers, received packages in the mail, each of which contained this self-published fantasy novel called A Broken Blade, written by an anonymous author, along with a letter and hints saying things like, read the book to discover which book talker wrote it, or a video that said, unmask me if you can. It took Book Talk and us at Union Square by storm. So we decided to publish A Broken Blade, this debut novel by Melissa Blair in her Halfling saga. It is a lush, dark, romantic fantasy about a stirring rebellion in a colonial world. Our lead character is named Kira. She's the king's favored assassin, and she's called upon to hunt down a mysterious figure called the Shadow. She is haunted by a promise she made long ago, though, one that will test her in every way. In between, though, a slow burn romance for Kira adds an intense, sexy spin that reminded this reader of Spike and Buffy the Vampire Slayer in this crucial addition to the commercial fantasy space, perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas. Next slide is how to manifest. Searches for manifesting continue to rise, and they went up 400% between 2020 and 2021. And that's before brand new #2 NFL draft pick, Aiden Hutchinson, former Michigan Wolverine, stood on the field after Michigan beat Ohio State last year and said with his mom standing next to him, quote, "This is the best moment of my life. I manifested it. I'm here with my family and teammates on this glorious day. Put simply, what you dream, you can achieve." And this 40-day plan for manifesting dreams has techniques that include setting your intentions, crafting your own story through scripting, and creating a mindset through inspired action. Next up is the ultimate tailgating playbook, where you can turn your tailgate into a tail great. 75 mouth-watering recipes guaranteed to make you the MVP of the parking lot. It's dips and apps, it's soups and salads, rib stickers and post-game desserts with clear eyes and a full belly you can't lose, and you can make memories and recipes to last a lifetime. Next slide is Molly Gilbert, the founder of the food blog Duncan Crumble, graduate of the French Culinary Institute and original sheet pan queen, joining us to satisfy our sweet tooth with 75 brand new hassle-free recipes for easy desserts made using everyone's favorite pan, classic treats, and bold new feats. Molly makes something for everyone in her book, Sheet Pan Sweets. Next, for the politically minded American crusade, author Andrew L. Seidel, a constitutional attorney, dives into the debate on religious liberty and what he says is the attempt to weaponize religious freedom and the Supreme Court's role in it. He looks at several key cases over the last 30 years, including Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission, and how a hallowed legal protection, freedom of religion, has been, in his mind, turned into a tool to advance privilege and impose religion on others. The actions of the Supreme Court have perhaps never been more in focus, and we think the right time for this important book. And lastly, the next slide, The Art of the Cosmos, 100 stunning examples gathered by author Jim Bell that celebrate those who push civilization to its limits, letting readers slowly travel on a journey farther and farther away from home. But here on planet Earth, if you have any questions about Union Square and Company, please let me or my nice colleague, Andrea Gokenauer, know. We'll be at ALA Annual in Washington, D.C. Come by and say hello. Those are the books, and that's the way it is today. My friends, have a great day.
Hello, I'm Melissa from Hachette. I'm going to share a selection of fiction titles that stretch into fall and then move on to nonfiction titles in the same manner. Next slide. The Devil Takes You Home is a genre-defying thriller about a father desperate to salvage what's left of his family, even if it means a descent into violence, both supernatural and of our own terrifying world. This is a panoramic odyssey for fans of S.A. Crosby's, oh look, Melissa lost her train of thought, Southern Noir, Blacktop Wasteland, by way of the boundary-defying storytelling of Stephen Graham Jones and Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Gabino will be at ALA, and so will Annie and I, but hopefully I'll remember to say more about that later. Next slide. New York Times bestselling author Kimberla Lawson Roby returns with Sister Friends Forever, the perfect story of friendship. Kim writes about 4 friends who have known each other since they were children, and this is Kim's first full-length standalone novel in years, and the subject of women's friendship makes it the perfect end of summer read. Next slide. Haven, and this beautiful story of adventure and survival from New York Times bestselling author of Room. We find ourselves in the 7th century Ireland with a scholarly priest who has a dream telling him to leave the sinful world behind. We grab 2 monks. Now we are rowing down the River Shannon in search of an isolated spot on which to found a monastery. The boat drifts out into the Atlantic. The 3 men, and us if we stayed aboard, find a bare island inhabited by tens of thousands of birds and claim it for God. What will survival mean? Next slide. In November 2021, Netflix and Riot launched Arcane, which released to massive and commercial critical success on Netflix. The Story of Ruination is the first ever novel set in the blockbuster universe of League of Legends. This is an epic tale of magic, revenge, and an empire on the verge of ruin. Next slide. Ithaca is the story of Penelope, the famed wife of Odysseus. Next slide, sorry. Beyond Ithaca's shores, the whims of gods dictate the wars of men, but on the Isle, it is the choices of the abandoned women and their goddesses that will change the course of the world. Hell yeah. Okay, next slide. Oh, I hope I don't get a demerit for the curse. Okay, Less is Lost is the follow-up to the Pulitzer Prize-winning Less. The awkward and lovable Arthur Less returns in an unforgettable road trip across America. Less is trying to run away again. Oh. However, we cannot escape ourselves, regardless of the we cross deserts, bayous, and coastlines. Les must eventually face his personal demons. This is a profound and joyous novel about the enigma of life in America, the riddle of love, and the stories we tell along the way. It's filled with irrepressible wit and musicality. Next slide, on to nonfiction. Beth Macy, oh, The Wing of the Bird. This is, a great collection of short fiction from Afghan women. Really excited about this. Next slide. Beth Macy is the best-selling author of Dope Sick, the inspiration of Hulu's dramatic miniseries. Raising Lazarus tells the story of the everyday heroes fighting to stem the tide of drug overdose in communities that are too often left to fend for themselves. A complex story of public health, big pharma, dark money, politics, race, and class that is by turns harrowing and heartening, infuriating, and inspiring. It's a must-read for all of us. Next slide. Like a Rolling Stone by Jan Wenner. This is Jan's intensely personal memoir, vividly describes the and brings the reader into the rock and roll era, and not just the music, but also politics, the culture, and the entire seismic generational change that swept America and beyond. As both a reporter and a player, Wenner writes with the clarity of a journalist and the private knowledge of an insider. Next slide. Distinguished historian Peniel E. Joseph offers a powerful and personal new interpretation of recent history, the racial reckoning that unfolded in 2020. He argues marked the climax of a third Reconstruction, a new struggle for citizenship and dignity for Black Americans, just as momentous as the movements that arose after the Civil War and during the Civil Rights era. Next slide. A Place Called Home. As a child, David Ambrose was raised homeless in New York City, the home of Wall Street, and also more than 100,000 children suffering from homelessness. In the tradition of May, this memoir with a social justice mission and a heart-wrenching tale advocating child welfare. Next slide. Stacy Schiff restores Samuel Adams to his rightful place as the father of the revolution. He was the colony's leading propagandist, political organizer, and spark plug. His life had 3 acts. He was a failure as a business person first, and then a mediocre governor and statesperson last. But in the middle, in the decade leading up to the shot heard around the world, his performance was one of the greatest in America's histories. Next slide. Join me in reading romance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, please. I hope. Next slide. Next 2 slides. Bestsellers that hopefully are making your patrons happy every day. Thanks. Next slide. And next slide. And the next slide, last slide. Thank you for listening. Most of these are available for digital reading via Edelweiss. Email me with questions. Greatly appreciate your time and attention. And our wonderful host, my new colleague, Annie, and I'm showing off, and we'll be at ALA. And we are going to debut a lot of fun stuff. So swing by. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm a marketing coordinator with Penguin Random House's Library Marketing Department. Next slide, please. Okay, first up, we've got some events I want to shout out really quickly before we jump into our titles. Coming up, we have our morning book buzz on June 1st. We have our morning buzzes almost monthly. If you've never joined us before, please do. They're a lot of fun. We love sharing our big forthcoming hits with you all. Any events we have coming up, audio news, the works. It's free to join, and you can register at the tiny URL on the screen, and you can check out any of our previous buzzes at the tiny URL below that. I will try to drop links in the chat as well. Next slide. We also recently partnered with School Library Journal and many others to create this really beautiful Open Books, Open Doors poster. You can download a digital version for yourself on SLJ's website or on our Banned Books Hub. And you can also request a hard copy from us at the tiny URL on screen. And for any more information on Penguin Random House's resources regarding banned books, again, you can visit our Banned Books Hub, and the link for that is on screen as well. Next slide. You can also celebrate AAPI month with us by registering for the next event in our AAPI Communities and Conversation series. This June 14th, you can listen to author Malika Gharib, author of I Was There, American Dream. Again, it's free to register. It's a really wonderful series, and there are more events to come. So you can check out the link there, and you can register for this event and the upcoming events we have in the future. Next slide. Okay, first up, we have The Neapolitan Sisters by Margot Candela. This is great for fans of Therese Ann Fowler and Laurie Frankel. It's told in alternating points of view and is a humorous yet moving look at what it means to be a sister, a daughter, and ultimately your own self, despite the pressures that come with being part of a large family. This author lives in LA, where the novel is set, so there are great personal ties weaved into the area, and it's a great pick for readers interested in contemporary fiction featuring moving portraits of family, sisterhood, and community. Next slide. Very exciting. We have a new title from the New York Times bestselling author of Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising, and many more. We have the latest from Taylor Jenkins Reid, Carrie Soto is Back, where a legendary tennis athlete attempts a comeback when the world considers her past her prime. This is a very powerful and vulnerable novel from Reid about the cost of greatness and redemption. It does have a sporty premise, but it has all the elements that fans of hers love: beautiful, emotional writing, strong, willful female characters. The works, your patrons are really going to love this one. Next up. Next, we have a new memoir from New Yorker staff writer Hua Su, Stay True. This is for readers of friendship memoirs like Patti Smith's Just Kids. It's a very heartfelt work from Su on the loss of his best friend in a carjacking. Su was also a panelist at our recent spring festival and said this of the memoir, that writing it was a healing way to get closure while grieving and also spend just a little bit more time with the friend that he lost. This is an excellent read for engaged enthusiasts and fans of the Asian American experience of the 90s, like Crying in H Mart and Beautiful Country. Next slide. And finally, the long-awaited new title from Celeste Ng, best-selling author of Little Fires Everywhere, Our Missing Hearts. It's a deeply suspenseful and heart-rending novel about the unbreakable love between a mother and child in a society consumed by fear. It's an old story made new of the ways supposedly civilized communities can ignore the most searing injustice. It's a story about the power and the lessons and legacies that we pass on to our children. As you all know, Ng has a very powerful voice, and this new novel from her is poised to truly showcase that. Next slide. Okay, that's it for me. Again, you can request e-galleys at the tiny URL that we've been dropping periodically in the chat. I'll drop our other links in the chat as I can, and if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at library@penguinrandomhouse.com. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda Casserly. Thanks for taking the time today to hear about what is new at Blackstone Publishing. First up, we have a couple titles from June not to be missed. Snowstorm in August by Marshall Karp is a brand new standalone from the #1 New York Times bestselling co-author of the NYPD Red series. It's a fast-paced and original thriller about a highly unique terror attack and its aftermath. And it's been getting a lot of buzz because it will include a sneak peek of the next NYPD Red book, which will be out in fall. Also on that side is The Nobodies by Alana Schubach. This is a great debut. Schubach's fiction has appeared in the Swanee Review and Electric Literature, among others. This is the story of two young women whose friendship offered and demanded more than either should share. And it's perfect for fans of Sally Rooney and Claire North. Next up is The Swift and the Harrier by Minette Walters. This is a sweeping tale of adventure and loss, sacrifice and love, with a unique and unforgettable heroine at its heart. Walters is a New York Times bestselling author, and this one is historical, it's literary, it has romance, it has mystery, it has everything you want in a summer read. Next up is Half Outlaw by Alex Temblador. This is a novel of magical realism about one woman's quest to find a better future while still wrestling with the tumultuous past. A recent review described it as a beautifully complicated story about family, identity, and riding badass bikes that will tear you apart and build you back together in all the best ways. Next up is Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. This is an ingenious new high concept thriller from the #1 internationally best-selling author of The Liar's Girl and The Nothing Man. In this new story, something isn't quite right on the set of the movie Final Draft. When the strange goings-on in the script start to happen on set too, Adele begins to fear that the real horror lies off the page. Howard's 56 Days was a New York Times and Washington Post best thriller of 2021 and a Book of the Month Club selection. So this is another great one for fans of thrillers and fans of Catherine. Next up is The Enigma Affair by Charlie Lovett. This is the new thriller from the New York Times bestselling author of Escaping Dreamland. When a librarian and a professional assassin team up to solve a 75-year-old Nazi mystery, they just might change the world. It's a fast-paced thriller with a thoroughly researched World War II background, so great for mystery fans and historical fiction fans as well. Next up, we have God, Family, Country by Craig Morgan. In this new memoir, country music icon, Army veteran, father, and outdoorsman, Craig Morgan shares all aspects of his life, revealing stories even his most avid fans don't know. He's doing a lot of publicity around the release of this one. It's a really great inspirational autobiography. It had a cover reveal in People magazine with an excerpt. He was also just on the Kelly Clarkson show. So he's doing a lot of promotion around this one. And next up, Beasts of the Earth by James Wade. James Wade's first two novels were praised as rhapsodic and haunting. And here he delivers his most powerful work to date, a chilling parable about the impossible demands of hate and love, trauma and goodness, set in the landscapes of Texas and Louisiana. And next we have a couple titles which are available from Blackstone in audio. We have The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This is from the author of the acclaimed In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. It's a pitch black thriller about a woman determined to destroy a powerful cult and avenge the deaths of the women taken in by it, no matter the cost. And also Girl Forgotten by Karen Slaughter. A small town hides a big secret. Who killed Emily Vaughn? This is a pulse-pounding and twisting new novel from the New York Times bestselling author of Pieces of Her and the Will Trent series. And finally, we have a couple of current TV tie-ins. Showtime by Jeff Pearlman is the basis for Winning Time on HBO, which just got renewed for a second season. We have that available in audio. And also Hotel Portofino. We have available in print as well as audio, and that one is coming to PBS as a series starting June 19th. And last slide, all our contact information is there, so please reach out if you'd like review copies for library reads or more information about any of the titles. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Sharon Schell from Independent Publishers Group, and thanks for joining us today. I have a few books I want to share with you. I'm excited to get started. So next slide. Our first title is 1922, Scenes from a Turbulent Year by Nick Renison. 1922 was a year of great turbulence and upheaval. Its events reverberated throughout the rest of the 20th century and still affect us today, 100 years later. Empires fell, the Ottoman Empire collapsed after more than 6 centuries. The British Empire had reached its greatest extent, but its heyday was over. The Irish Free State was declared and demands for independence in India grew. New nations and new politics came into existence. The Soviet Union was officially created and Mussolini's Italy became the first fascist state. In the US, prohibition was at its height. The Hollywood film industry, although rocked by a series of scandals, continued to grow. A new mass medium, radio, was making its presence felt, and in Britain, the BBC was founded. In literature, it was the year of peak modernism. Both T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland and James Joyce's Ulysses were first published in full. In society, already changed by the trauma of war and pandemic, the morals of the past seemed increasingly outmoded, and new ways of behaving were making their appearance. And the Roaring Twenties had begun to roar, and the Jazz Age had arrived. 1922 also saw the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, the arrest of Muhammad Gandhi, the death of Marcel Proust, the election of a new pope, the release of the first major vampire movie, and the brief imprisonment in Munich of an obscure right-wing demagogue named Adolf Hitler. In a sequence of vividly written sketches, Nick Renison conjures up all the drama and diversity of an extraordinary year. Next slide. I, Mona Lisa by Natasha Solomons. This is an irresistible insight into the world as it looks through the eyes of the most famous painting of all time. Listen to my history. My adventures are worth hearing. I have lived many lifetimes and been loved by emperors, kings, and thieves. I have survived kidnap and assault, revolution, and 2 world wars. But this is also a love story and the story of what we will do for those we love. In Leonardo da Vinci's studio, bursting with genius imagination, towering commissions, and needling patrons, as well as discontented muses, friends, and rivals, sits the painting of Mona Lisa. For 500 tumultuous years, amid a whirlwind of power, money, intrigue, the portrait of Lisa del Giocondo is sought after and stolen. Over the centuries, few could hear her voice, but now she's ready to tell her own story in her own words, a tale of rivalry, murder, and heartbreak. Weaving through the years, she takes us from the dazzling world of Florentine studios to the French courts of Fontainebleau and Versailles, and into the 20th century. This is a deliciously vivid, compulsive, and illuminating story about the lost and forgotten women throughout history. Next slide. The Physician's Daughter by Martha Conway. This is from the author of The Underground River and comes this compelling new novel of female perseverance. It's set in the aftermath of the Civil War. The Physician's Daughter is a story of 2 people trying to make their way in a world that is struggling to escape its past. It is 1865. The American Civil War has just ended. And 18-year-old Vida Tenney is determined to pursue her lifelong dream of becoming a country doctor like her father. But when her father tells her that she must get married instead, Vida explores every means of escape and finds one in the person of war veteran Jacob Culhan. Damaged by what he's seen in battle and with all his family gone, Jacob is seeking investors for a fledgling business. Then he meets Vida, and together they hatch a plan that could satisfy both of their desires. Months later, Vida seemingly has everything she ever wanted. But alone in a big city and haunted by the mistakes of her past, she wonders if the life she always thought she wanted was too good to be true. When love starts to compete with ambition, what will come out on top? Next slide. This next title is called Lost in Time. It's by A.G. Riddle. This is highly anticipated, and I encourage you guys to request an ARC for this one. It's just a gripper. It's from the worldwide best-selling author of the Extinction Trials, Departure, and the Atlantis Gene, and it's this new sci-fi thriller. Dr. Sam Anderson is one of the most celebrated scientists in history. 10 years ago, he invented a device that changed the world forever, and now his life is about to be ripped apart, and his own creation may be to blame. One fateful morning, Sam discovers that his girlfriend has been murdered and that his daughter is accused of the crime. Sam believes she's innocent, but he can't prove it. There's only one thing he can do to save his daughter: confess to the crime. And so he does. But in the future, murderers aren't sent to prison, they're sent to the past. Thanks to Sam's invention, Absalom, the world's worst criminals, are exiled forever, and they're sent back to the time of dinosaurs, where they live out their lives alone. As Sam steps into the Absalom chamber to leave for the late Triassic, he makes a promise that he will get back to his family, clear his name, and find the person who killed the woman he loved. What Sam doesn't know is that there's a secret waiting for him in the past, and it might be his only hope of saving himself and his family. So this reads like a superior collaboration between Dan Brown and Michael Crichton. So this has got some good stuff behind it. So take a look for that. Next slide. And the next slide. So on our website, you guys, we have loads of catalogs, and Edelweiss and NetGalley, you can get, digital copies or review copies or anything you're interested in. And you can, next slide, contact me for any questions you have or interests. So thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Kirchie, and I'm a library marketing manager at Simon & Schuster. Thanks for being here today. Next slide. Everyone in Orange County's Little Saigon knew that Thuong sisters were cursed. It started with their ancestor, On, who dared to leave her marriage for true love. And this caused such a big deal that a Vietnamese witch cursed On and her descendants so that they would never find love or happiness, and that the Thuong woman would give birth to only daughters and never sons. On's current descendant, Mai Wen, knows this curse very well. She's divorced, and after an explosive disagreement a decade ago, she's also estranged from her younger sisters, Min and Kayan, and it seems like this pattern will continue with Mai's 3 adult daughters who are successful in their careers, but not in their love life. Desperate for guidance, she consults Auntie Hua, her trusted psychic in Hawaii, who delivers an unexpected prediction. This year, her family will witness a marriage, a funeral, and the birth of a son. This prophecy will reunite the estranged mothers, daughters, aunts, and cousins, for better or for worse. A multi-narrative novel brimming with levity and candor, The Fortunes of Jaded Women by Carolyn Wynne is about mourning, meddling, celebrating, and healing together as a family. Next. This is 100 Saturdays by Michael Frank, which recounts the extraordinary life of Stella Levi. With nearly a century of life behind her, Stella had never before spoken in detail about her past. Then she met Michael Frank. He originally came to her Greenwich Village apartment one afternoon to ask her a question about the Juderia, the neighborhood in Rhodes where she'd grown up in a Jewish community that thrived there for half a millennium. Neither of them would know that this would be the first of 100 Saturdays that they would spend together, as Stella mentally traveled back in time to conjure what it felt like to come of age on this luminous, legendary island, and as one of the last survivors of the Holocaust. This is a portrait that is drawn at the last possible moment, as well as an account of a tender and transformative friendship that develops between the storyteller and listener as they explore the fundamental mystery of what it means to collect, share, and interpret the deepest truths of a life deeply lived. Next, the author of Queenie is back with People Person. If you could choose your family, you would definitely never choose the Penningtons. Dimple Pennington knows of her half-siblings, but she doesn't really know them. They're just 5 people who don't really have anything in common except for faint memories of being driven through their neighborhood in their dad's gold Jeep and some pretty complex abandonment issues. Dimple has bigger things to think about in the past. Her present kind of sucks. She's 30, her life isn't going anywhere. She's an aspiring lifestyle influencer with a boyfriend who is the worst. Her life has shrunk to the size of a phone screen, essentially. And despite a small but loyal following, she's never felt more alone in her life. That is, until a dramatic event brings her half-siblings Nikisha, Danny, Lizzie, and Prince crashing back into her life. And when they're all forced to reconnect with Cyril Pennington, the absent father they never knew, and the source of all of those fun abandonment issues, things get even more complicated. From Candice Carty-Williams, People Person is a vibrant and charming celebration of discovering family as an adult. Next. Some of you here might be familiar with Rin Chupeco's work, as they've written various young adults novels, and this is their first foray into adult fantasy with Silver Under Nightfall. Remy Pendergast is the outcast son of the Duke of Valendon and part of a group of an elite bounty hunters of rogue vampires. No big deal. Despite his outcast status, Remy's father has been shaping him into a weapon to fight for the kingdoms of Illyria at any cost. One day, while patrolling outside of the city, Remy encounters the vampire heiress Shout and Song and her fiance, vampire lord Zidane Malik, who may hold the key to defeating the new dangerous breed of vampire that's been popping up. Remy agrees to go with them to find the truth about these vampires and the mutating virus that's been plaguing the kingdom. As the 3 face dangerous hardships during their journey, Remy develops fond and complicating feelings for the couple. He begins to question what he holds true about vampires, as well as the story behind his own family's legacy. Remy must decide where his loyalties lie, with his father and the kingdom, or the vampires who might just be the making of him. Next. And new from your favorite authors this fall. First up, we have Fairy Tale, a spellbinding dark fantasy from Stephen King. The winners, the long-awaited conclusion to Friedrich Bachmann's beloved New York Times bestselling Beartown series. And we have The Last Chairlift, the first novel in 7 years from John Irving. Next. Before we say goodbye, I wanted to remind everyone of our resources for librarians, which I will drop links to in the chat when I'm finished here. We have the Book Drop. This website is dedicated to being a resource for you. It is filled with a seasonal brochure with our department's recommendations, links to our full digital catalog, book trailers, and more. We also have our Book Club Favorites program where you can get resources and request author appearances for your local book clubs. And for larger community read-alongs, check out our One Book, One Community program website where you can get recommendations, info about bulk pricing, and more. Next. That is everything for me. Feel free to request these titles on NetGalley or Edelweiss if you'd like to read them. And if you're going to ALA, I will have print copies of some of these as well. And don't forget to vote for Library Reads. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with us today. I'm Dina Sherman. I'm the School and Library Marketing Director at Disney Publishing Worldwide. And I'm very happy to present some of our adult titles from all of these wonderful imprints coming up. Next slide, please. First up from our newest adult imprint, Anscape, is The Rise of the Black Quarterback. This started as a series of articles on ESPN's The Undefeated, which is now called Anscape, website, culminating with an hour-long television program in February 2020, hosted by Jason Reed. Now Reed is expanding on that series, chronicling the shameful history of the treatment of Black players in the NFL and the breakout careers of a thrilling new generation of Black quarterbacks. This page-turning account will rivet fans of sports, cultural commentary, and Black history in America. Next. Thank you. The newest edition of the Concise Atlas of the World brings National Geographic's award-winning cartography into everyone's reach. Expert up-to-date maps include physical and political details and boundaries, key data for each continent, plus flags and facts for every country, enhanced with photographs portraying themes and regions. Maps and database graphics also give a visual representation of some of the timely issues of our day, like population trends, climate conditions, health, and economics. And a special section on space includes maps of the moon and Mars, as well as diagrams of the solar system, the universe, and exploratory missions. These large format pages allow for copious detail. A sturdy softcover format promises a long shelf life, and a comprehensive place name index enables quick and easy searches. Next, please. A Man of the World is the captivating inside story of the man who helmed National Geographic for 6 decades. Though his career path has been paved by 4 generations of his family before him, Gilbert Grosvenor left his mark on the National Geographic Society, founded in 1888, and recognized the world over by that ubiquitous yellow border that we put on the cover. In an unflinchingly honest memoir, Grosvenor shows us what it was like to grow up geographic in a home where explorers like Robert Peary, Louis Leakey, and Jane Goodall regularly crossed the threshold. As staff photographer, editor-in-chief, and then president of the organization, Grosvenor oversaw the diversification in television, film, books, as well as its flagship magazine, which under his tenure reached a peak circulation of nearly 11 million. He also narrates the shift from a nonprofit, family-focused enterprise to the more corporate, shall we say, Disney-owned, bottom-line focused world of publishing today. Next. Okay, so believe it or not, living to 100, 120, or even 130 years old will become increasingly common over the next decade. And life over 100 may not be what you think. In the Great Age reboot, best-selling author Dr. Michael Roizen, along with acclaimed economists Peter Linneman and Albert Ratner, unpacks a wide swath of medical phenomena and shows how increased longevity will change our lives and our culture. They also provide a concrete action plan for good health, a youthful appearance, mental vigor. Sorry, I didn't write this and it's hilarious to me, but we all want youthful appearance, mental vigor, and strong finances in this brave new world. Now, next slide. This is my preferred way to grow older. It's a little scary to realize that I am almost the same age as 3 of the 4 Golden Girls, but this is my retirement plan. So the newest Golden Girls cookbook, Cheesecakes and Cocktails, has over 40 new dessert and drink recipes from Blanche, Rose, Dorothy, and Sophia. So whether it's Sophia's limoncello cheesecake cupcakes or Blanche's Big Daddy mint julep, you will feel like you're relaxing on the lanai or getting set to win the Shady Pines Bake Off. Next, please. With travel picking back up, I'm happy to share our newest editions of the best-selling Burnbound guides. These official guides to Disneyland and Disney World are the only ones with the latest up-to-date information and insider tips directly from Disney. At Disneyland, Disney California Adventure has undergone a major renovation, and the guide covers all the new attractions from Pixar Pier to Avengers Campus. While Disney World is celebrating its 50th anniversary with the World's Most Magical Celebration, which is an 18-month event that lasts until March 2023. And as always, the Kids Guide offers insider tips specifically for young readers, including kid-friendly descriptions of all the theme park shows and attractions, colorful maps, photos, and Disney character illustrations. All right, next, please. So I have to say, I do not do well with scary books. but I couldn't stop reading Malice House by New York Times bestselling author Megan Shepherd. I read the entire book in one weekend, and the only reason I didn't read it in one day is that I had to put it down when it got dark out because I was getting so freaked out. Of all things aspiring artist Haven Marbury expected to find while clearing out her late father's remote seaside house, Bedtime Stories for Monsters was not on the list. This secret handwritten manuscript is disturbingly different from his Pulitzer-winning works, and the stories unsettle, but also practically compelling her to illustrate them while she stays in the house that her father warned her was haunted. When a monstrous creature appears under her bed, right as grisly deaths are reported in the nearby woods, she has to race to uncover dark, otherworldly family secrets, completely rewriting everything she ever knew about herself and her family in the process. Next slide. Last up, in 2019, Ryan Russell, or Russ, as his family and friends call him, broke the mold when he was the first active NFL player to come out as bisexual. He reclaimed his life and his identity as an athlete in an essay and exclusive interview for ESPN, and now in his powerful memoir, The Yards Between Us, he shares his full story of walking the devastating tightrope of keeping his sexuality secret, the tension between his private and public lives, and the importance of crashing through barriers. And that's it for me. You can find us online. We have a lot of galleys and blads on NetGalley for the Net Geo titles. They tend to mostly just be blads that are up there. But those are read now, so you don't need to request them. And I will also be at ALA, so I hope to see everybody there. And we will have print galleys as well at that show. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Golda from Norton. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can find links to our DRCs and to sign up for our newsletter through this library marketing link on the slide, which I will also put in the chat when I'm done. And now for some highlights from our fall list. So, okay, we are thrilled to have a new book from Andrea Barrett. Natural History is a collection of 6 interconnected stories spanning from the Civil War era up to now. And there are some characters that show up from her previous works, but you can come to this brand new and not feel like you're missing anything. Andrea Barrett always weaves in nature and science, and she looks at the ways women's lives have changed across the decades. We are also reissuing her National Book Award winning novel Ship Fever in paperback at the same time. Next slide. The next book is another one that we're thrilled about, Lydia Millett's new novel, Dinosaurs. The main character, Gil, just wants to be useful in the world. He's kind of a Ted Lasso-like character. He gets involved in the lives of the family next door to his new house in Arizona. The story that follows is classic Millett, the everyday made epic. She describes human movements and behaviors in prose both funny and kind, as she illustrates the ways our lives are at once insignificant, but also profoundly important to the web of humanity. Lydia will be on a Booklist Authors and Arcs webinar this Friday, and I hope you will tune in to hear more from her. Next slide. Africa is Not a Country is an exuberant, opinionated, stereotype-busting portrait of contemporary Africa in all its splendid diversity. This is the kind of travel writing that shifts easily from food to football, elephants to Ebola, the absurdities of We Are the World to the latest music from the streets of Abidjan to Zanzibar City. Dipo Foloyan is out to break harmful stereotypes of Africa, expose their ugly origins, and gleefully take readers far beyond what we usually encounter in writing about the continent. Next slide. This is what it sounds like. What the Music You Love Says About You is by a well-known music producer who worked with Prince and a neuroscientist. Susan Rogers and Ogi Ogas walk you through how music works on your brain and why you like certain things. And some of the stuff that they talk about sounds like the appeal factors that library staff use when they're doing reader's advisory with patrons. So this is like music advisory. And the book also includes playlists for every chapter that we will post on Spotify. Next slide. The Fight for Privacy by Danielle Citron talks about all aspects of the laws that support or limit privacy. She offers suggestions for how to protect yourself online, and she expertly lays out a path forward for reform, utilizing existing laws to reaffirm, protect, and guarantee the protection of privacy. Next slide. Weaving Sundown in a Scarlet Light is a celebration of 50 years of Joy Harjo poetry. She picked 50 poems, beginning with her early discoveries of her own voice and ending with moving reflections on our contemporary moment. The book includes notes for each poem that give you extra insight into the work. Next slide. The House in the Orchard is one of the lead novels from Tin House for the fall. This twisty Gothic tale of corrupted innocence has a strong atonement feeling to it, and it should appeal to fans of historical fiction and dark secrets. Next slide. No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai is going to be available in hardcover for the first time in decades. This book has been a bestseller for New Directions in the past few years, mostly due to fans of the manga and anime adaptations talking about it on TikTok. Next slide. The Only Child is a historical mystery from Scarlet, an imprint of Penzler Publishers. Set in the Pacific Northwest, Kate Quinn called it a clever whodunit revolving around the pangs of motherhood and the lengths women will go for their children. And we also got a great quote from Jacqueline Winspear. Next slide. I wanted to point out some of our cookbooks that are coming soon. King Arthur Baking School is a general baking book that brings you the expertise of the King Arthur Baking Company, organized in a way to help you learn and progress in your baking. Company by Amy Thalen is for home cooks who love to have people over. She offers menus and lots of tips for entertaining. And Breadhead by Greg Wade, who is the baker at Publican Quality Breads in Chicago. He shares his love of bread and of the Grateful Dead in this book full of rich and flavorful loaves. Next slide. So of course we have a lot more books coming out this summer and fall, but there's never enough time to talk about them all. So on the next slide, I have a link to our complete catalog, which I will also post in the chat. And thank you all again so much for listening and for all of the work that you do for your communities. And I'll see you at ALA.
Hi everyone, I'm Essie. I'm the library marketing assistant for HarperCollins, and I'm very excited to be here. Next slide, please. Okay, first we have When We Were Bright and Beautiful by Jillian Meadoff. This is a deep, twisty read for about folks who have it all and it's still not enough. This story follows Cassie Quinn and her brother Billy, who was just arrested for assaulting his ex-girlfriend. This is not something that Cassie believes, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to prove his innocence. But that's easier said than done, because Billy fits the sex offender profile too well. He's white, he's athletic, he's privileged, and soon his trial turns into a media frenzy, and Cassie is forced to choose between her brother and her own dark secrets. I love this story for many reasons. There's just so much to talk about here. Class, sex and consent, privilege, and family, or the people who make it possible for love to blind and loyalty to go just a bit too far. It's very hard to put this one down, and that's When We Were Bright and Beautiful. Next slide. All That's Left Unsaid by Tracy Lian. First of all, I love alternating points of view in books that I read. It just adds a whole layer to storytelling, and Tracy has accomplished this with so much finesse, and this is a debut. This is a story about Kai Tran, a young Vietnamese Australian woman who's haunted by 4 words: just let him go. That's what she told her parents when they asked if they should let her brother go out to celebrate his graduation. She never expected the night to end in his murder. Beyond that, she never expected there to be a dozen people at the restaurant where her brother was killed, all bystanders claiming to have seen nothing. In an attempt to ease her guilt, Kai becomes determined to figure out what happened, and along the way, she finds seeds of violence that were planted long before her brother's murder, by the war in Vietnam, by an indifferent police force, and by the worst heroin epidemic in Australian history. Again, this is a book that offers so much to talk about. It tackles grand scale issues like generational trauma with the same grace and humility that small moments are given, such as when Kai licks off her smacker's lip gloss too much to the point where she gets a blister. It's just written to shine a light on a lot of issues and to connect a lot of people, and it accomplishes just that. Next slide. Oh yes, and because this book is so wonderful and so thought-provoking, it is also our Make Alley Club selection, and we'll meet Tracy Lian next week on Tuesday, May 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and we're really excited for that, so don't miss out. Next slide. Okay, The Burning Season by Alison Wisdom. I love this book so much. It's atmospheric, it's dark, it's uncomfortable, but this isn't a book you read to be comfortable. This is a story about Rosemary, a woman who's made a lot of mistakes in her marriage, and she's trying to make up for them by agreeing to live in a Christian community with her husband that's run by the local church. That's for all intents and purposes a cult. Her husband is getting along just fine. I mean, how could he not be? He tells Rosemary that he had a prophetic dream, that her hair is making her too vain, so she cuts it. You read it and think, what does this guy even have to complain about? And then you see who Rosemary really is, and then houses start mysteriously burning down, and it all starts to unravel from there. This is a story that was inspired by two of Alison's college classmates who dropped out and started their own cult, community. So with that basis in reality, so to speak, combined with Alison's edgy, poetic writing style, this is just an excellent book, and I think everyone should read it. Next slide. Okay, and Now Is Not the Time to Panic by Kevin Wilson. Okay, this is the New York Times bestselling author of Nothing to See Here. Here we have the story of two teens, Frankie and Zeke, both offbeat, both indifferent, both incredibly talented. They find themselves in a town that is otherwise asleep and unhappy, and when they meet each other, sparks fly. The two create an unsigned poster with the phrase, "The Edge is a shantytown filled with gold seekers. We are fugitives, and the law is skinny with hunger for us." The poster was meant for no one and everyone, and suddenly appears everywhere. People wonder and worry who is behind it. Rumors spread, mystery brings dreadful consequences, and over what? A poster. This is something Frankie, or rather Frances Eleanor Budge, has put out of her mind. Her life is amazing now, 20 years later. She's successful, she's happy. There's no way the Coalfield Panic of 1996 could upend her life now, until a journalist calls threatening to do just that. Now Is Not the Time to Panic is a love letter to the power of art, to the exploration of young love, to figuring out who you are and just what exactly sets you free. And all I could say here is that Kevin Wilson has done it again. Next slide. Okay, yep, that's everything. I'll put the links in for next Tuesday's event in our chat. Feel free to email me with any questions, and thank you all for listening.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Erin Kotke. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager from Consortium Book Sales and Distribution, a division of Ingram. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I'm your last presenter today. Consortium proudly distributes over 125 independent publishers from around the world. So today I'm going to quickly be covering 5 key titles from 5 of those publishers, but there's so much more. My contact info is on a couple of the slides you'll see, and I can also drop it into the chat. Feel free to email me if you'd like anything you see here. And please visit cbsd.com to sign up for Library Express, which is our weekly newsletter for librarians. So the first book I'll be sharing with you is Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight by Riku Onda, translated from the Japanese by Alison Watts and being published by Bitter Lemon Press in July. You may be familiar with Riku Onda, as her previous book, The Aosawa Murders, was a New York Times notable book of 2020 and a Guardian Best Mystery Novel of the Year. This novel, her second, is an engrossing mystery whodunit. Set in Tokyo over one night, a man and woman sit in an empty apartment one last time, both with the aim of getting the other one to admit that they murdered the guide, who died inexplicably while leading them on a mountain trek. Each chapter is told in alternating perspectives, covering the events leading up to the guide's death and unraveling the complicated relationship between the two protagonists. The result's a kaleidoscopic psychological thriller that, as you might expect, contains a few surprise twists and turns. PW called it a tour de force that demonstrates how suggesting events can be so much powerful than explicitly depicting them. Next slide, please. Next up is A Girlhood, Letter to My Transgender Daughter by Carolyn Hayes. I'm obsessed with this book. It's forthcoming from Blair in September. I can't overstate how much excitement is building for this book in-house and beyond. Everyone who has read it has been totally bowled over, so I'm thrilled to be able to share with you today. A Girlhood is by a prominent best-selling author who's choosing to use the pen name Carolyn Hayes to protect the identity of her child. Her novels have been published by Hachette, Simon & Schuster, and HarperCollins, and have been on numerous Best of the Year lists. So one ordinary day, a caseworker from the Department of Children and Families knocked on the door of the Hayes family's, knocked on the Hayes family's door to investigate an anonymous complaint about the upbringing of their transgender child. It was this knock, this threat, that began the family's journey out of the Bible Belt, but never far from the hate and fear resting at our nation's core. This is a particularly important work to come out now in the wake of recent policies in the state of Texas and elsewhere regarding transgender children. The story is riveting, it's compelling, frightening, heartbreaking, but there's also hope in it. While the book is certainly topical and timely, at its core, it's simply about love and parenting. It's a book for all parents. It's a gorgeous love letter to a child who's always known exactly who she is, and it unabashedly prioritizes love and support over all other possible actions. So we're expecting really big things for this one. Next, please. Now I'm going to move into a poetry title, Alive at the End of the World by Saeed Jones, coming from Coffee House Press in September. Saeed is a powerhouse, a larger-than-life cultural tastemaker. His most recent book was a 2019 memoir called How We Fight for Our Lives, which won the Kirkus Prize and was named a Best Book of the Year by just about every place you can think of. Alive at the End of the World is Jones's first book of poetry in 8 years, following his critically acclaimed and award-winning debut collection, Prelude to Bruise. Drawing from memoir, fiction, and persona, he confronts the everyday perils of white supremacy with a finely tuned poetic ear, identifying moments that seem routine even as they open chasms of hurt. These are timely poems that are accessible without compromising artistic integrity. As in his previous book, Saeed's writing is smart, funny, and heartbreaking, often all at once. So this will be a big poetry book this fall. Next, please. Next up is Bigger Than Bravery, Black Resilience and Reclamation in a Time of Pandemic, edited by the late Valerie Boyd, who sadly passed away in February of this year. Bringing together the voices of those most harshly affected by the intersecting pandemics of systemic racism and COVID-19, Bigger Than Bravery features a truly extraordinary list of contributors, featuring original essays and poems by Jason Reynolds, Tayari Jones, Honoré Jeffers, Alice Walker, and many others. The book celebrates Black lives and what we can learn from joy as an act of resistance. It captures what Boyd called the first draft of history, with poems serving as deep breaths between narrative essays to form a loose chronology of this completely unprecedented time. Courtney B. Vance, the Tony and Emmy-winning actor, said that Bigger Than Bravery isn't just an anthology, it's a survival guide. The book will be published this fall by Lookout Books. And next slide, please. And finally, to wrap things up, I just wanted to very briefly mention Our Members Be Unlimited, a comic about workers and their unions. From an Amazon warehouse in Melbourne, where the author worked for a year, to Britain and Bangladesh, to Walmart and China, and the New York City taxi strike against the Muslim ban, this book's a highly original visual exploration of the history of unions and the power of collective action, something that continues to be in the news. And final slide, please. And that's it, that's me. So there's my contact information. Please, don't hesitate to be in touch. I'd love to send you any of these books, and thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Annie, for having me.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. It is always a pleasure being able to bring you all of these amazing books that are forthcoming in the next few months. One final note, that this case-sensitive link will take you to the Edelweiss collection where all of these books live. So you can see them all in one place. You will also receive from me an email in the next day or two with a link to the video of this presentation and this link, so you can have it in your email, and a certificate of participation, because we know that you have taken time out of your day and we really appreciate that. So thank you all so much. Take care.